Today, we exist in an era where information is instantaneous and entertainment is on demand. Some crimes and news have left such a deep mark on society that they not only capture the headlines, but also become topics of fascination for documentaries. Netflix, one of the most influential streaming platforms in the world, has compiled and presented many of these shocking stories, giving them new life and a global audience. So in this compilation, we are going to explore and also analyze once again a series of news, crimes, and events that have amazed everyone and due to their significant impact today, have their own documentary on Netflix. Known as Kai the Hatchet-Wielding Hitchhiker, or in Spanish, the backpacker with the hatchet, also known by his name as Caleb Lawrence McGilvery, he became a viral phenomenon back in 2013 due to a unique incident. While hitchhiking in California, the young man found himself in a dangerous situation when the driver who picked him up became violent and threatening. In an act of self-defense, Caleb used an axe he carried with him to neutralize the driver, which led to his arrest. His story gained notoriety thanks to a television interview in which he narrated the incident in a colorful and humorous style, turning him into an iconic character on social media. However, his later life was marked by legal troubles, including murder charges in a separate case in New Jersey. This excerpt is from an interview conducted with Caleb Lawrence McGilvery on a quiet afternoon in February 2013. A young backpacker who called himself the Axe Backpacker embarked on a journey that would change his destiny forever. I repeat to you, in English it would be Kai, the hatchet-wielding hitchhiker. But getting back to it, while hitchhiking in search of his next destination, a stranger driver stopped to pick him up. What started as a simple road trip soon turned into an episode of unimaginable violence. McGilvery recounted that he was hitchhiking and was picked up by Jed Seymour McBride, whom the young man described as weighing 308 pounds and who claimed to be Jesus Christ. During the journey, Jed claimed to have sexually abused a minor under 14 years old while he was on a business trip in the Virgin Islands. He later began to hug his passenger, seeking comfort in his arms. The driver's attitude changed immediately, justifying his actions by considering that he himself was Jesus Christ and could do whatever he wanted. This revelation obviously alarmed the young man, who could do little to prevent Jet from driving his car into a parked utility truck. In the act, a worker was trapped between the bumper of Simmons' vehicle and the truck's guard. Kai immediately got out of the vehicle to try to help the worker, while the driver remained in his place with complete calm. The situation was witnessed by a woman who was passing by the scene and tried to approach to help. However, when she approached Simon, he lunged at her, hugging her violently. Faced with this imminent danger, Kai decided to resort to an unusual resource, an axe he carried with him as a travel tool. In a desperate act of self-defense, he used the axe to neutralize the driver, preventing what could have been a tragic outcome. McGilvery describes the axe blows with the word smash, smash, smash while representing the blows from above. The young man recounts that he was later questioned by the police and released. Kai's bravery and cunning not only saved his own life, but also led to the arrest of the violent driver, ending the episode of violence on the highway. However, what made this story transcend the boundaries of a common incident was the television interview that followed the event.
On February 2nd, 2013, Jason Reisbeck uploaded the video to YouTube, who had conducted the interview for KMPH.
As of January 14, 2023, the video had accumulated over 8 million views. Subsequently, the Gregory brothers sampled the interview and transformed it into a song, which further expanded the reach of the video. Smash!
Smash, smash!
Kai, known for his colorful personality and peculiar sense of humor, became a viral phenomenon thanks to the way he narrated the incident in the interview. His account, tinged with slang and unique linguistic twists, catapulted him to fame on social media and earned him a special place in the hearts of many. People began to affectionately call him the hatchet-wielding backpacker, and his online followers increased considerably. Then, in January 2020, McGilvery was interviewed on Inside Edition, where scenes from the viral video were shown. As a result of the original video going viral, the young man received numerous offers from various news and entertainment sources seeking interviews and appearances. This ultimately led to his appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live on February 11, 2013. Caleb Lawrence McGilvery, born on September 3, 1988 in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, has mentioned that he was raised in a fundamentalist Christian cult and that his parents divorced. He also revealed that he was abused in his youth. As a teenager, he moved with his family to St. Paul, Alberta, where he attended St. Paul Regional High School. While living on an indigenous reservation, he adopted the name Kai after participating in a spiritual walk. Jill's father said that he, from Hawkesbury, Ontario, had a tough life from an early age. His father was a former probation officer. According to the man's statements, he was born and raised in Canada before taking his own path, apparently illegally, to the United States. Caleb spent time in treatment homes until he was 18 when he was discharged and, according to his father, was left to his own devices. From a young age, he made accusations of physical and mental abuse in one of the treatment homes. On the other hand, his father regretted that the system failed in his protection. He also divorced his mother when he was 4 years old and lost custody of his son as a result. Caleb's mother, Shirley, said that the young man graduated from high school and took college classes. I think Caleb didn't like the fact that I remarried, that I didn't rescue him from the treatment home, that I have 3 children with my current husband. She, on the other hand, denied her ex-husband's claims that Kai had attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and stated that she last spoke to her son when he was still living in Canada in the fall of the year prior to the viral incident. She expressed her concern and desire to help him if he reached out to them. That on the other hand, his father has been vocal in his support for his son and has joined a Facebook page dedicated to freeing Caleb from the persecution of the United States justice system. On his Facebook page, in fact, he describes his son as more a victim of circumstances, a survivor with a big heart despite what has happened to him. He has also sought financial help for Caleb's legal defense. I never knew what happened after I lost custody of Caleb and what he was going through. When I had visits, I tried to help my poor son. Thank you for posting this. This statement was mentioned by his father in a media outlet. After the incident in California, his fame grew exponentially. Kai became a very recognized media figure. Meanwhile, his followers on social media, who considered him a hero for his intervention in California, began to raise legal funds in his support. In May 2013, he was arrested on murder charges related to the death of Joseph Galtby, a respected New Jersey lawyer. The story surrounding his arrest is as confusing as it is controversial. Kai claimed that his encounter with Joseph began when the latter offered him a place to stay for the night, seemingly a kind act of hospitality. However, according to the young man, the situation took a sinister turn when his host drugged him and subjected him to intimate abuse. In response, the young man alleged that he was forced to fight for his life in a desperate act of self-defense. Kai's version of events directly conflicted with the police narrative, which argued that the intimate encounter was consensual and that taking Guffey's life was premeditated. This fundamental disagreement over what really happened that fateful night created additional tension in an already high-profile case. And as McGilvery's trial unfolded, his notoriety grew even more thanks to the perception of his social media followers that he was a hero who had stepped in to save a woman. The media's attention also focused on this case, turning it into a topic of public debate and a constant focus of attention. Kai spent more than 5 years in prison, anxiously awaiting the start of his trial, which finally began in April 2019. During the process, he presented his own defense and proved to be combative during cross-examination. In the courtroom, there were moments of high tension, including an incident where he was nearly expelled due to an emotional outburst. Do you know how many girls are attractive? Forget it, even if I was gay, do you know how many attractive guys wanted to sleep with me after that shit in California? I'm not even being vain. It's a fact, no offense, but he wasn't handsome. This is what the young man mentioned in the outburst I was telling you about. But on the other hand, the culmination of this legal drama was the jury's verdict that declared this man guilty of first-degree murder of this person. The court imposed a severe sentence of 57 years in prison. In addition, he was ordered to serve 85% of that sentence before being considered for parole. Similarly, the judge who pronounced the sentence emphasized the fact that when Kai is eligible for parole, he will still be younger than his victim at the time of her tragic death. Gauthier was 73 years old at that time. And despite this overwhelming sentence for the boy, he did not give up and appealed the conviction. He alleged a series of instances of misconduct, abuse of discretion, and issues with legal defense. However, in August of 2021, the New Jersey Court of Appeals upheld the murder conviction, leaving him with a long sentence in the New Jersey State Prison in Trenton. On January 10, 2023, Netflix premiered the documentary The Hitchhiker of the Axe, which tells the story of this character, including others that I just told you about. In the days immediately following the release of the material, media interest in his case intensified. As a result of this, Kai felt that the platform had used him to benefit economically at the expense of his suffering.
I peeked a little over the cliff and saw my daughter's sneakers.
This is the story of the crime of two girls, of a woman who was innocently accused due to police mistakes, and of a wicked man who sought pain. Rocio and Sonia, two young girls whose lives were taken in different years. Dolores, the partner of one of their mothers, condemned for a crime she did not commit. A sadistic British thug. Laura, Rocio's mother, who continues to accuse her ex. Cecilia, the monster's wife who provided key evidence. These are the protagonists of a plot that seems like a movie but happened in real life in modern Spain, and demonstrates the terrible mistakes of the judicial system, the poor police investigation, and the dangerous preconceptions that can populate the collective imagination and pressure the authorities. A chilling event that marked Spain. It all began when Rocio Waninkov, a 19-year-old of Dutch-Spanish origin, was killed on the streets of Mijas, Malaga in October 1999. Her case became the most high-profile of the 21st century on the Iberian Peninsula, with a convicted and imprisoned culprit. In 2003, the story regained relevance due to another crime that resembled it and managed to put the police on the trail of the real criminal. On Saturday, October 9, 1999, Rocio Waninkov Hornos, with long brown hair, a big smile, and 19 years old, spent the afternoon at her boyfriend, Antonio Jose Jurado's house until she decided to go home, located just 543.744 yards away, to bathe and change. She would then meet him and some friends at the Fuengirola Fair. Rocio did not make it to the fair, and the last person to see her alive was a passerby at 9:30 in the evening. The next morning, her mother, Alicia Giorno, noticed her absence. She asked her other daughter, Rosa, to make a quick trip to Antonio's house to see if she was there. But he said he knew nothing about Rocio and suggested that she might be sleeping at a friend's house. Since they couldn't find her, Alicia reported her disappearance to the civil guard. The mother didn't waste a minute and went out to look for her in the neighborhood. A few meters from a path on a vacant lot, she found her daughter's shoes and a handkerchief splattered with blood. Alerted police followed the trail to a vacant lot, where they found a red puddle and car tracks. 4 days later, a taxi driver reported having swerved around a car that was across the road with its lights on in the area at 10 o'clock the night before. In doing so, he claimed to have heard a squeal or a scream coming from inside the vehicle. He was so scared that he closed the windows of his taxi and immediately continued on his way. Things could have been very different if this man had acted bravely and intervened. However, 3 weeks passed without news. On November 2nd, in a field behind the El Rodeto restaurant, 24.23 miles from where Alicia had found the shoes, Rocio's naked and badly decomposed body was found. The forensic experts determined that she had 9 stab wounds, 8 in the back and 1 in the chest, and that she had been doused with a flammable liquid and burned. This made it impossible to determine whether or not there had been abuse. However, they also found some semen stains and a crushed cigarette butt. Near the scene, there were also 2 black garbage bags with some of Rocio's belongings, such as 2 white shirts that were torn as a result of the knife slashes. In addition, her underwear and pants were missing. The first suspect would be her boyfriend, Antonio Jose Jurado. The young man admitted to the police that he had planned to meet her that night, but he said that he didn't go to the fair because he fell asleep. He couldn't specify what clothes Rosillo was wearing that afternoon, and he also couldn't explain why he didn't hear the attacker's assault, given that his room seemed to be quite close to the crime scene. But when the forensic lab results came in, it was found that the semen stains didn't match anyone from Rocio's inner circle. The deoxyribonucleic acid found on the cigarette butt didn't either. That took Jurado off the homicide detective's radar. The police focus shifted to Alicia Horno's ex-girlfriend, the mother of Rocio Dolores Vasquez. This woman of British origin appeared distant and unempathetic towards the tragedy. Dolores and Alicia, who had lived together with Horno's 3 children, had recently ended their relationship on bad terms. Alicia had left her for a man, and Dolores' coldness and masculinity played against her. The images of Alicia accusing her on television for the crime of her daughter went around the world. After several interrogations, the civil guard arrested Dolores Vasquez on September 7, 2000. The media pressure was enormous, and a trial full of irregularities ended up being held. A few fibers found on the victim's body that supposedly matched those of a garment of the accused were the evidence, or at least what they called evidence. Alicia's statements about Dolores' threats for having left her and her revelation that the accused used to carry a knife for self-defense were added to the evidence of the investigations, although it was later proven with a new study that the fibers did not correspond to those found on the body. However, everything continued, and Dolores proclaimed herself innocent and claimed to have been taking care of her mother that night. She provided calls and data that were not taken into account. The prosecutor presented his theory: it had been a crime of resentment and revenge. According to the prosecution, that night, Dolores Vasquez had gone out for a run and had encountered Rocio. With a sharp object, she would have repeatedly stabbed her and dragged her body to hide it first, and then move it to her house with a car that another person had stolen from her. She would have later discarded it where it was found. The outrageous and unsupported hypothesis was endorsed by the popular jury, who on September 25, 2001, declared Dolores Vasquez guilty. 7 votes in favor of her conviction and 2 against. She was sentenced to 15 years and 1 day in prison. The convicted woman's lawyers were stunned by this sentence without evidence, and in February 2002, an appeal to the High Court of Justice of Andalusia ordered the sentence to be annulled and a new trial to be held that never materialized. Vasquez spent 17 months in prison until something else happened that cleared her of all guilt. On Thursday, August 14, 2003, 17-year-old Sonia Caravantes disappeared during the festivities of the Virgin of Fuensanta in Coin, a town located 11.81 miles from Mijas. At 5 in the morning, she was returning home with a friend. They separated meters before arriving, but during those brief steps, Sonia vanished, disappeared. No one realized that she had not returned until later in the morning. Her family notified the civil guard and began their search, very close to the house, just as it had happened with Rocio. They found her cell phone, a purse, and a shoe with traces of blood discarded. Wasn't this a good omen? On August 20th, a couple found Sonia's body in a secluded area of the industrial park in Monda, a town near Coin. She was naked and from the waist down, buried under rocks and debris. The brow was torn, she had been strangled and had received several blows to the head. Investigators concluded that her attacker had waited for her in hiding, and when he saw her alone and defenseless, he approached her, hit her, and put her in the trunk of his car. He took her to a deserted area where he removed her clothes, abused her, and hit her again. He ended up strangling her, and there were witnesses who said they saw a white car driving around that area in the early morning. The experts described that Sonia Caravante suffered a terrible agony caused by 37 injuries as a result of the blows she received before losing her life, suffocated with her shirt knotted around her neck. But Sonia had defended herself strongly. She had scratched her killer, unluckily for him, managing to accumulate enough skin under her nails from the attacker to obtain a perfect genetic profile. When they compared the deoxyribonucleic acid found under Sonia's nails with the criminal interest databases, a match jumped out. The police's surprise was huge. It was the same deoxyribonucleic acid from the samples taken from the Royal Crown cigarette butt and the semen that had been collected at the place where Rocio had been assaulted 4 years earlier. With this, there was no doubt the person responsible for the assaults was the same man, which meant that they had condemned an innocent woman. This brought the missing link. Cecilia Matilde Pantojas and Tony King had been living on the Costa del Sol, Spain, since 1997 with their daughter Sabrina. The first time Cecilia began to suspect something strange about her husband was when the crime of Rocio occurred. That night he returned home and had a strange behavior. This was explained by Cecilia years later because he took a bath and threw all his clothes in the trash. It was like a premonition, an instinct, something that hits you in the stomach. This is what she recounted during the trial in which she testified against him, King's ex-wife. Sometime after what happened to Rocio, with a marriage already falling apart, a friend told her that she had seen Tony King on a television program where he was shown as a criminal and alleged aggressor. Cecilia was shocked by this. She called the English police and they explained his background for armed robbery, but assured her that they didn't tell her much more. In 2000, Cecilia and King stopped living together. The marriage had failed, and Cecilia had even mentioned to a neighbor friend that she suspected that Tony could be responsible for Rocio's death. Her friend thought she was exaggerating at that moment. When Sonia Caravante disappeared without a trace in August 2003, Cecilia's stomach twisted. She couldn't deceive herself any longer. The night young Sonia disappeared, Tony King had gone to see her with scratches on his face and blood on his clothes. The excuse her ex-husband had given was that he had had an altercation at the Cohen Fair. Cecilia contacted Scotland Yard and they told her to go tell everything she knew to the Spanish police, and so she did. And Cecilia gave them another crucial piece of information. King smoked Royal Crown cigarettes, the same brand as the butt that had been found at one of the crime scenes. It was just what they needed. On August 16, 2003, the Spanish police entered King's residence in Alguarin El Grande in Malaga. At that time, King was working as a bartender. The authorities left there with Anthony Broish, or rather as he had renamed himself, Tony King. The 38-year-old Brit was the owner of the deoxyribonucleic acid that matched the one found in the two cases, Sonia's and Rocio's. On Thursday, September 18, 2003, the National Police formally arrested him as the alleged perpetrator of the two crimes. King broke down and confessed. One of the officers who participated in his interrogation said that the accused had described feeling like the hunter and the women were his prey, and had clarified that what he was really looking for was to abuse the victims and then, with this memory, do a little job. You know what I mean? That he only gave himself love with his hand. In case you didn't understand me, the psychiatric experts defined him as a psychopath, but made it clear that despite suffering from antisocial personality disorders, he was not a mentally ill person because he retained his ability to understand and act in order to be able to answer for the facts that were attributed to him. One of the experts who interviewed him on 6 occasions assured that it was quite likely that he would commit acts of the same characteristics again, and was released pointed out that the accused lacked empathy, had no feelings of guilt, showed no remorse, and was a perfect manipulator for his own benefit. He was the king of perversion, as he came to be known. But who was this man named Tony King really, and what had he done in his own country? Anthony von Wischtal was Tony King's real name. He was withdrawn, quiet, not too intelligent, and was very concerned about his image. He had been obsessed with bodybuilding from a very young age. His obsession led him to steroid abuse and excessive consumption to acute sexual impotence. Driven mad by this and because his intimate relationships failed, his character suffered and he turned to alcoholism and illicit substances. When drunk or intoxicated, he lost his shyness, became overbearing and very violent. He used to hang out in trendy bars, boasting that he had slept with underage girls, that he had ended the abusers of his own sister, and that he committed crimes that his mafia bosses ordered him to do. He also boasted of carrying a machete and several weapons in his car. The truth was that his frustration generated an uncontrollable need to impose himself violently. In short, the man was a deadly bomb. He committed his first crimes in 1985 at the age of 19. Although he worked at a printing press and had a formal girlfriend named Lynn Carey, he had Mondays and Wednesdays off. It was on those days of the week that he realized his darkest fantasies. He strangled 5 young women from behind with a cord until they were unconscious. Then, when they were unconscious, he would assault them but did not abuse them, likely due to his impotence that prevented him from doing so. In his own London neighborhood, people began to talk about the Holloway Strangler. He was discovered, tried, and sentenced to 10 years in prison. However, after 5 years, he was granted parole, but he had no better idea than to assault a woman at gunpoint, which got him back in jail to complete his sentence. In his youth and during his time out of prison, he had always lived with his mother Linda and his stepfather in the north of London City. His family was well liked in the neighborhood. Their house had a blue front door and had a small backyard garden. They seemed like a very normal family, that is, until his misdeeds began and his parents started living in terror. In 1995, after serving his sentence, he got out of jail and managed to get the British justice system to allow him to change his name to Tony Alexander King. He met a woman, Cecilia Matilde Pantoja, and they moved in together. Shortly after their daughter Sabrina was born in 1997 in London, they moved to Spain. They settled on the Costa del Sol, and for some years King sold apartments and committed these illegal acts. Then came the divorce, and Cecilia started a new life with another man. Finally, returning to what we were talking about, King was sentenced in 2005 to 36 years for the murder of Sonia Caravantes. He was then given 7 years for an attempted abuse in Benalmádena in 2001 and an extra 2.5 years for the assault on Maria, a victim who reported the aggressor before the crime of Sonia Caravantes. In 2006, he was sentenced to an additional 19 years for the case of Rocio. He was also ordered to pay 300,000 euros in compensation to the Caravantes family, and his ex-wife Cecilia testified against him. Since 2008, he has been living in the Herrera de la Mancha prison in Ciudad Real due to his extreme danger. His day-to-day consists of spending 21 hours in a 4x4 individual cell. He won't have any penitentiary leave until 2033. By then, he would be 68 years old. The only exception to this severe penalty occurred in September 2007, and it was due to a tragic death. He was allowed to attend the funeral of his own 10-year-old daughter, Sabrina King. He, this cruel aggressor who had suffocated so many women, as a kind of karma, but at the same time without the daughter being to blame. He had to face the drama of his own daughter who drowned in the pool of the condominium where she lived with her mother and stepfather. This was the closest the Holloway Strangler ever came to the pain he knew how to cause to the families of his victims. To this day, Scott Lajard continues to investigate King's involvement in the crime of 2 more girls in the United Kingdom, because it is estimated that he could have about 12 deaths on his back. By the way, Scott Lajard is the police in the United Kingdom. On the other hand, and before finishing this video, Alicia Hornos, the mother of Rocio, is now 70 years old and lives surrounded by photos. She has hung up the photographs of her other 2 older children, one of her 4-year-old grandson, and the giant one of Rocio, eternally young. The last 2 years, he kept adding sorrows. In Christmas 2019, Rocio's father, with whom she had always maintained a great friendship, died from multiple sclerosis. In 2020, she had to face her own diagnosis of lymph node cancer. Alicia still insists, as from the beginning, that her ex-partner Dolores Vasquez had something to do with the matter. She repeats that Tony King did not act alone. King, for his part, has bombarded her with letters from prison, filling her head to convince her that he is not the aggressor. The content of these chilling letters, for the details they contain, despite having confessed at the time, King says he was forced to take the blame. He omits that it was his own ex who sent him to prison and lashes out at the deoxyribonucleic acid evidence because he says they were planted and points at Dolores Vasquez. These statements show that he at least admits to having been there at the exact moment of the crime. In his story, he places himself as a spectator and adds gruesome details with stabbings and pools of blood. On the other hand, Alicia Horn tells us, "I still believe that Tony King is innocent, and my lawyer Marcos Garcia Montes also believes it. My family says to drop the subject already. They don't want to know anything. They don't want to stir anything up. I want the case to be reopened so that the truth is known." As I tell you, these are Alicia's words. But, well, now in 2021, this news will return to the forefront because Netflix is going to premiere a documentary named The Waninkoff Case, which, by the way, Alicia declined to appear in this Netflix documentary. But surely, as this producer has too much money, they will surely contribute more data and details to this story. Details that perhaps at this moment we do not know. January 1993 is undoubtedly a date that marked Spanish society and the entire world as 2 men found the bodies of the teenagers who had disappeared in Alcácer 75 days ago. What the bodies of Miriam, Sirey, and To Amplas I told us when examined afflicts us due to the magnitude of the damage, and it is even more terrifying to know that although one of the attackers is serving a very long sentence, the other criminal is still on the run and sought around the world. It seems as if the earth has swallowed him, but even with this case is a mystery, and stay to see it so you can see what the mystery is. Today, I'll discuss the Alcácer girls case. That 27th of January of the year 1993, the men found a pit near the IR beehive, a pit that they did not remember seeing before, but intrigued by that discovery, they decided to look inside. What was their surprise that at the bottom of it they could see an arm coming out of the ground and it had a man's watch on it. Scared, the subjects ran downhill straight to the village to report the event to the civil guard. What at first pointed to this being a man's body changed as soon as the forensic team investigated the pit. After the report, the judge of Anzira, Jose Miguel Puat, ordered to start the proceedings at the place, and then it was discovered that there was not a man's body there, but it was 3 bodies of teenagers wrapped in a carpet. They had ties on their hands, one on top of the other. 2 of them had their heads separated from the rest of the body. Although they already showed advanced decomposition and deterioration of their clothes, the forensic scientists immediately deduced that they were the 3 missing girls from the town of Alcácer, the same girls who had been desperately searched for 2.5 months already. At this point, there was a lot to do because with this being revealed, any other speculations were ruled out because now it was known for certain that it was a case of homicide. But how did the girls get to this place? What happened? It was Friday afternoon, more specifically November 13th, 1992. The friends, Maria Deseada Hernandez Folch, better known as Desiree, 14 years old, Miriam Garcia Ibora, also 14 years old, and Antonia Gomez Rodriguez, 15 years old, known as Tony, left their home in Alcácer to visit their friend Esther, to invite her to join their plan to go dancing at the Cala nightclub, located in the municipality of Picassant. But the girls didn't count on Esther being sick, and the 4th friend luckily decided to stay home. Miriam called her father Fernando's house to ask if he could take them, but he had come home from work with a fever that day and was already resting in his bed. It is said that the girls were very used to going to have fun at that place, and they knew well that being far from their homes, they would not be able to get there before closing on their own, so they decided to hitch a ride on the street. The women began to make the hitchhiking signal to ask for a lift as they left the town. The couple Francisco Hierva and Marie Luz approached them and took them to the Marie Picazon service station. From there, the girls hitchhiked again until, according to some witnesses, they had gotten into a white Opel car in which 2 young girls were traveling, and these witnesses would be the last to see the girls alive besides their attackers, since they never made it to the disco or their homes hours later. The parents of the affected girls, seeing that they did not arrive, went in search of them directly to this place. But here the party had already ended in the venue. Only the employees who were cleaning remained. The parents, scared, asked them if they had seen the girls, to which these men commented that they had not seen any of the 3. At that moment, imagine, panic took over those parents, and without thinking twice, they rushed to file a missing person report. The search for Miriam Siretoni began as soon as dawn broke, but it was very inconclusive because no traces of their whereabouts were found. At that moment, the theory that those young girls had run away from home would also have been discarded, as they had no family problems and had left with very little money. The search extended even to other European countries such as Portugal, France, and Great Britain, because there was suspicion that the girls might have been captured by a white slave trade criminal organization, and the risk of having been illegally extracted from Spain was quite latent. As is known, in these types of cases, the clues increased. Many calls were received from people who believed they had seen them separately or even together, but none would have been true. So it was that the days turned into nights, and the hopes of finding them alive quickly dissipated until, after 75 days of search without response, the morning of January 27th, the beekeepers of Taos discovered what the affected parents feared most, finding their little girls lifeless. In the midst of the proceedings of the bodies found in that pit, that same afternoon a civil guard comes up with a clue that would become a key piece for the case, as it was a medical prescription, and on it the name of Enrique Angles, which directly related the suspect to a criminal with the same last name. It was the brother of the subscribed patient, Antonio Angles, 27 years old, well known for having a history of theft and trafficking of illegal substances. As soon as Antonio's name was linked, the civil guard went to his home, but seeing the police arrive, this individual fled in terror, managing to escape through the window. Left inside the house were his mother, Nusa Martins, his brother, Enrique, who they noticed suffered from a mental disability, his sister, Kelly, and her boyfriend. Soon after, his other brothers Mauricio and Ricardo got to the house. Ricardo was with Antonio's partner in crime and friend. It was Miguel Ricard, alias El Rubio, who was only 23 years old and also had a large criminal record. The civil guard took everyone to the station as witnesses except for the mother. They also issued an arrest warrant for Antonio. Each one was interrogated, however, they had very solid alibis and would be released, but not Miguel Ricard. He didn't have an alibi, plus he contradicted himself in every statement he gave. The blonde ended up confessing just before midnight. He said that Antonio and he were in the car that picked up the girls at the second service station and that they had kidnapped them, that Antonio had abused them and had taken their lives, and that he only supposedly had helped him. According to Ricard's statements, everything had happened this way. On the night of November 13th, they were in the car when the girls hitchhiked. They got in the vehicle, but Antonio did not take them to the disco as they had requested. Instead, they went to an abandoned building located about 12.4 miles away, this in the ravine of La Romana. Upon arrival, they forced them to enter this place, and inside they tied them to a wooden post and then abused them. Ricard said he only abused Sire and that his role as an accomplice was to hold the girls by the legs so they couldn't resist. He told the interrogators that after abusing them, they tied them up again and left them alone in the building while they went to a bar in Caradao, another neighboring town, where they bought some sandwiches because the activity, to put it in some way, had made them hungry. Hours later, back at the building, he also said that Antonio took the three girls again, and after that he was very exhausted and then fell asleep. He later recounted that the screams and cries of the three girls had woken them up. Antonio, very angry, yelled at them to shut up, but they, desperate, did not do so, and Antonio took a stick and in fury began to hit uncontrollably. Then, full of rage, he went out and dug a hole about 765 yards from the building. He went back for the three girls and took them out at gunpoint. The girls turned their backs, and he surprised them with a shot to the head. Ricard declared having helped his friend to wrap them in a carpet, and they covered them with dirt once they had thrown them. However, months later, Miguel, or El Güero, would retract his three statements, saying that they had been extracted under torture, but the medical reports following the interrogation made it clear that he had no injuries. In addition, by then his white Opel had been recognized by witnesses as the car that the three girls from Sire, Tony, and Miriam had gotten into. On the other hand, the police were looking for the apparent sole killer of the three girls. But in addition to Ricard's statements, the bodies of the three little girls would tell their own story, and here it goes. After finding the bodies, the first autopsy was performed immediately on January 28th and was carried out by 6 official forensic doctors. This analysis was led by Professor Fernando Verdu Pascual, and the resulting report was submitted to the court 3 months later. The second autopsy was performed at the request of the victims' families. This was done by the expert Luis Frontella. In addition, the Valencian forensic team and 2 civil guards who took photographs of the process were present as observers. This analysis was more thorough than the first one. The expert, after finding a total of 15 hairs on the girls' clothes, carried out a deoxyribonucleic acid study on them. Of these, 12 did not match the deoxyribonucleic acid of Ricard or Antonio. The remaining 3 were damaged and could not be analyzed. In addition to finding 1 gray hair that did not belong to any of the suspects, Frontella discovered deoxyribonucleic acid sequences belonging to between 5 and 7 different people in the hairs found, but could not determine the exact number of people who participated in the crimes. Frontal pointed to the participation of at least 2 individuals, with the participation of 3 or more being more likely. On the other hand, the larvae found on the bodies were also analyzed through photos and videos taken during the first autopsy, to which the expert pointed out that the size of the insects did not correspond to the state of decay of the corpses, adding that the young women had most likely been buried in 2 different parts. He also added that the lack of bruises or lacerations suggested that the girls had suffered some fatal hemorrhage or even had been submerged in water, but since there was no direct contact with such insects, they could not confirm any of this latter. At this point, what was truly happening looked very different from the clarifying statements, as the physical evidence argued another scenario, which made this case a total mystery. On the other hand, the news coverage of this triple femicide in that Spanish town was constant, and this, in a way, facilitated Fernando Garcia, Miriam's father, to raise his voice on national television. The man reported to the media that the official suspects Antonio Angles and Miguel Ricard were just decoys of a conspiracy organization. Garcia claimed to be sure that Ricard, or the blonde, was just the scapegoat, so to speak, in charge of hiding the girls' bodies, and that the murders had been carried out elsewhere after torturing the little ones in front of a video camera for the production of a snuff film. As I tell you, for Fernando, for the father, the crime had been the work of a gang made up of sick businessmen and politicians who paid fortunes to participate in their films, ending kidnapped women to satisfy their darkest instincts, and that the police investigations had only pointed to Ricard and English to cover up very powerful people. In addition, his theory was that Antonio Ingles disappeared without a trace because he had been eliminated to leave no loose ends regarding the tapes. However, Miriam's father was never able to provide compelling evidence of what he so objected to, and justice did not consider such suspicion. By September 5, 1997, the Provincial Court of Valencia sentenced Ricard to a penalty of 170 years in prison under the charges of 3 counts of murder, 3 counts of kidnapping, and 4 continuous counts of rape. On the other hand, it was said that on January 27, 1993, after escaping from the police when his relationship with the victims was known, Antonio was seen at the station north of Valencia. Witnesses informed detectives that the man was seen in a hair salon where he dyed and cut his hair to change his appearance. Also, the doctor who had written the prescription found in the pit that I initially told you about recognized Antonio when shown a photograph. He said that he had gone to his office pretending to be Enrique, his brother, to get a prescription for a psychotropic drug. Similarly, in 1993, Antonio was tracked down in the town of Minglanilla in Cuenca. There he escaped from the civil guard, and a month later he was almost captured by Interpol. He had been located at the house of an intoxicated man, but he escaped again, stealing his documentation and cash. Then he managed to sneak onto the city of Plymouth vessel. His route was from the port of Lisbon to Ireland, but he was discovered and locked in a cabin. The crew at that time did not know that he was one of the most wanted criminals in Europe. They say he had 2 accomplices who helped him escape from the cabin, and that he was able to get out near the Irish coast and ended up throwing himself into the sea. The next day, they found the life jacket floating in the water. Then, in the year 2006, they found remains of an unidentified body on Lambay Island, located on the north coast of Dublin, the Irish capital. Irish? But the reconstruction of the skull pointed to a strong resemblance to English. However, the oxyribonucleic acid testing revealed that it was another person. Today, it is not known if the fugitive killer is still alive, but it is hoped that one day the truth will be known. There is much speculation that he could be living under a false identity in Brazil, but these are just speculations. Meanwhile, Antonio Angles is still being sought by Interpol because justice awaits him and because we will never forget the name of Miriam Desiree Toñi. I'm going to leave the Netflix link down below for you to go and search for them. Thank you.